It's a quiet spring night in 1986. Cable television is exploding across America. Satellite dishes the size of small cars sit in backyards from coast to coast, pulling signals straight from space. For the first time in history, people can watch movies uncut, uninterrupted, and live from orbit. And then, somebody interrupts the signal. Viewers across the country are watching HBO when the picture suddenly vanishes. No movie, no sound, just color bars filling the screen. A message appears. No one knows who did it. No one knows how they got into one of the biggest television networks in America. And for a few surreal minutes, a pirate signal hijacks HBO nationwide. Tonight, we're tuning into one of the strangest broadcast intrusions in television history. Welcome to Greetings from Florida. I'm Joe Torino. Tonight's story takes us back to the golden age of cable television, when satellite dishes filled suburban backyards, premium movie channels ruled late-night entertainment, and the idea of hijacking a national broadcast sounded impossible. But on one spring night in 1986, somebody did exactly that. For just a few minutes, viewers across America watched as HBO's signal was hijacked by a mysterious figure calling himself Captain Midnight. No elaborate demands, no political manifesto, just a pirate transmission sent from somewhere on Earth into space and back down into millions of homes. And somehow, that bizarre act of rebellion would become one of the most legendary television intrusions in broadcast history. Tonight, we're talking analog satellites, underground tech culture, giant backyard dishes, and the man who briefly took over HBO. To understand the Captain Midnight hijacking, you first have to understand what television looked like in the 1980s. And honestly, it was kind of like the Wild West. Long before streaming, before YouTube, before digital cable boxes and Wi-Fi passwords, television signals were literally flying through space. Networks like HBO transmitted their programming to massive satellites orbiting Earth. Local cable companies would then receive those signals and relay them into people's homes. But there was a loophole. If you had enough money and enough technical knowledge, you could pull those signals out of the sky yourself. That's where the giant satellite dishes came in. And when I say giant, I mean giant. These weren't the little gray discs that we see mounted on roofs today. Some of these things were 10, even 12 feet wide. Huge metal dishes sitting in suburban backyards, looking like someone was trying to contact aliens. And for a while, owning one was incredible. You could access movies, sports, live feeds, and premium television directly from satellites overhead. And to a lot of people, it felt futuristic. But there was a catch. At first, many of these satellite signals weren't encrypted, meaning if your dish was pointed correctly, you could just watch them for free. But a lot of people doing it didn't see themselves as pirates. Many were engineers, hobbyists, or small business owners fascinated by satellite technology. Hotels and restaurants were already using satellite feeds legally to distribute programming to guests. So to many dish owners, accessing signals directly from space felt less like stealing and more like participating in the future. And the television industry absolutely hated that. By the mid-1980s, networks started scrambling their broadcasts to force satellite dish owners to pay subscription fees. And one of the biggest companies leading that charge was HBO, a decision that made a lot of people furious. Especially because many dish owners had already spent thousands of dollars on their equipment. And now, on top of buying the dish itself, they were suddenly expected to purchase expensive descrambler equipment just to continue watching channels they'd already been receiving. To them, it felt like buying a car, only for the manufacturer to suddenly start charging you every time you turn the key. Some scramblers cost nearly $400 US. That's around $1,200 US today. And for smaller satellite businesses across America, the impact was brutal. Some dealers shut down completely as dish sales collapsed almost overnight. The backlash grew fast. Satellite enthusiast magazines exploded with angry editorials. Tech hobbyists argued over encryption systems. Some people even saw the scrambling of signals as a direct attack on consumer freedom. Protests even reached Washington, D.C. Satellite television groups pushed lawmakers to protect free satellite access, arguing the industry was punishing the very people who helped popularize the technology in the first place. To many satellite dish owners, HBO's new fees didn't just feel expensive, they felt like betrayal. And somewhere inside that frustration, somebody decided to fight back. Not with lawsuits or protests, but with a pirate transmission aimed directly at HBO itself. It's just after midnight on April 27, 1986. Across the country, HBO viewers are settling in for a late-night movie. Everything seems normal. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in Florida, a satellite engineer sat alone inside an uplink station late at night. Earlier that evening, another engineer had gone home, leaving him by himself in the building. Before the end of his shift, he manually loaded SMPTE color bars onto the system and typed out a message using a character generator connected directly to the uplink equipment. A message he reportedly tried to keep polite, which is why it began with the words, "Good evening." Years later, the man behind the hijacking would describe that moment almost like an out-of-body experience, like he was watching himself do it in real time. Then, he pressed the transmit button. Suddenly, the screen began to flicker. At first, viewers probably thought it was a technical problem, maybe bad weather or local cable issues. But then, the movie disappears completely. And in its place, color bars appeared, a dark background, and white text slowly fills the screen. "Good evening, HBO, from Captain Midnight. $12.95 a month? No way. Showtime, movie channel, beware." Even the typo in the message, "Good evening," written as one word, would later become part of television history. For nearly 4.5 minutes, the message remains on screen. No audio, no explanation, just a pirate transmission overriding HBO's satellite feed nationwide. And here's the part that made this so shocking. This wasn't somebody hijacking a local station. This person had managed to overpower HBO's actual satellite uplink. That meant whoever did this had serious equipment, serious technical knowledge, and the ability to transmit a stronger signal than HBO itself, which was not easy. Inside HBO's communications center in New York, technicians scrambled to regain control of the signal. They began increasing transmission power in an attempt to overpower the pirate broadcast. But Captain Midnight increased his own signal strength in response. And for nearly 90 seconds, a bizarre control battle unfolded between HBO engineers in New York and a lone operator sitting inside an uplink station in Florida. At one point, engineers reportedly feared that increasing the power any further could actually damage the satellite itself. So eventually, they backed off, and Captain Midnight kept control. In that moment, Captain Midnight had effectively carried out what many consider to be the world's first satellite broadcast hijacking. As the pirate signal overtook the broadcast, HBO reportedly called Hughes Communications, the company operating the satellite, asking, "Is there something wrong with the bird?" The bird being industry slang for the satellite itself. But almost immediately after ending the transmission, the excitement faded, and panic set in. The man behind the hijacking later admitted he barely slept that night, replaying the moment over and over in his head, realizing what he had just done. Back then, satellite television worked almost like a giant mirror system in space. Television networks transmitted signals upwards to satellites orbiting Earth. The satellite would then bounce those broadcasts back down across huge sections of the country. If you wanted to hijack that signal, you had to point your own transmission directly at the same satellite and overpower the original broadcast. Imagine shouting louder than a television network into space. That's basically what happened. And for viewers at home, it was surreal. Some people thought they were witnessing a prank, while others thought it may be some kind of cyber attack, before most people even knew what a cyber attack was. This was the Cold War era, so random signals interrupting national broadcast felt genuinely unsettling, especially at 1 a.m. And government officials weren't just worried about television. Some feared incidents like this could expose vulnerabilities involving military or emergency communication satellites too. Because if somebody could interrupt HBO, then what else could potentially be interrupted? Reports later revealed that 1 week earlier, someone had briefly interrupted HBO with a color bar test pattern during overnight programming. Almost nobody noticed, and HBO never investigated it. Meanwhile, inside HBO and federal communications offices, panic started setting in, because whoever Captain Midnight was, they had just exposed a massive vulnerability in American broadcasting. And now, the FCC wanted answers. The morning after the hijacking, the hunt for Captain Midnight began, and the pressure was enormous. Because this wasn't just an embarrassing moment for HBO. It was a public demonstration that someone had successfully interfered with a national satellite transmission. And if one angry television customer could do this, who else could? When he returned to work the next night, Captain Midnight reportedly pretended to know nothing about the hijacking. And as coworkers discussed the intrusion around him, he acted just as shocked as everyone else. But inside, he was panicking. The Federal Communications Commission, better known as the FCC, immediately launched an investigation. Engineers started analyzing the intrusion frame by frame. They traced transmission paths, studied signal strength, reviewed satellite coordinates, and slowly, a picture began to emerge. Whoever did this wasn't a teenager in a basement. This was somebody who worked in the satellite industry. Investigators quickly realized this wasn't random interference. Whoever did this understood satellite frequencies, uplink procedures, transmission power, and broadcast hardware at a professional level. This was someone who knew exactly where to point the signal and exactly how far they could push it. That realization narrowed the suspect pool dramatically. Back then, uplink equipment capable of hijacking a satellite signal wasn't something you casually bought at an electronics store. The equipment was expensive, powerful, specialized, and most importantly, traceable. Investigators began focusing on satellite uplink facilities across the southern United States. The investigation quickly exploded into national news. And as the mystery spread, more than 200 people reportedly contacted authorities claiming they were Captain Midnight. To many frustrated satellite dish owners, Captain Midnight was becoming something of a folk hero. But investigators had something much more useful than confessions: the font. The white block lettering used during the hijacking was traced back to a specific character generator model used in professional broadcast equipment. And in 1986, that kind of technological detective work was incredibly advanced. Suddenly, investigators weren't searching the entire country anymore. They were narrowing down on a very specific kind of operator who was using a very specific kind of machine. Then eventually, they found a lead in Florida. The signal appeared to originate near the Orlando area. And before long, investigators identified a man named John R. McDougal. McDougal was a satellite engineer working for a satellite television company, and according to investigators, he had both the knowledge and opportunity to pull off the intrusion. But here's the weird thing. This wasn't some criminal mastermind plotting chaos. By most accounts, McDougal was frustrated. Frustrated with the rising satellite subscription prices, frustrated with HBO scrambling its signal, frustrated that ordinary dish owners were being pushed out. McDougal's satellite business was already struggling badly. After HBO scrambled its signal, sales dropped dramatically. According to later reports, McDougal tried cutting expenses however he could. He pulled advertising, turned off his air conditioning to save money, and he spent long stretches alone watching television and reading magazines while business disappeared around him. The hijacking itself wasn't even supposed to last as long as it did. The message reportedly remained on screen longer because of technical difficulties ending the transmission, which somehow makes the entire thing feel even more surreal. Eventually, McDougal admitted responsibility. And despite the nationwide attention, the punishment ended up being relatively small compared to what people might expect today. There was no prison sentence, no massive criminal conspiracy trial. Instead, he received a fine and temporary suspension of his FCC license. But the incident changed broadcasting forever, because after Captain Midnight, the television industry realized the analog satellite systems were far more vulnerable than anyone wanted to admit. And decades later, that bizarre 4-minute interruption still survives as one of the most famous acts of broadcast piracy in history. Today, the Captain Midnight hijacking almost feels impossible. Modern television broadcasts are heavily encrypted, digital systems are monitored constantly, and the internet changed the way information moves around the world entirely. But in 1986, there was still something raw and unpredictable about technology. The systems were powerful, but not fully locked down yet. And for a brief moment, one person managed to slip through the cracks. What's interesting is that Captain Midnight didn't become infamous because the intrusion was destructive. Nobody got hurt, no systems crashed, no ransom demands appeared on screen. It was essentially a televised complaint about subscription prices. And somehow, that almost makes it stranger, because millions of people witnessed what felt like a forbidden interruption, a crack in the illusion that major broadcast networks were untouchable. And that feeling would only grow in the years that followed. Broadcast intrusions became part of urban legend territory. People began trading stories about mysterious pirate signals, hacked television stations, and unexplained interruptions. Some were real, some were probably exaggerated, and some are still unsolved. Just 1 year later, another infamous television intrusion, the bizarre Max Headroom hijacking in Chicago, would push broadcast piracy even deeper into pop culture legend. Because even now, there are broadcast hijackings investigators never fully explained. Some executives even describe the incident as video terrorism, which sounds dramatic now, but in 1986, the idea that someone could hijack a national broadcast genuinely frightened people. And after Captain Midnight, the federal government moved quickly. Congress later passed legislation making satellite hijacking a felony offense. Broadcasters also developed new tracking systems designed to identify unauthorized transmissions almost instantly. All because one frustrated satellite engineer in Florida managed to overpower HBO's signal. But Captain Midnight remains different. Not because he was the most dangerous, but because it captured a very specific moment in time. That somewhere out there, somebody with enough knowledge and determination could interrupt the signal, even if only for 4.5 minutes. There's something almost charming about it now. A pirate broadcaster hijacking HBO over a pricing dispute feels uniquely 1980s. It's rebellious, a little absurd, and deeply tied to that era of giant satellite dishes and analog technology. A moment when the future still felt experimental, and occasionally a little haunted. Somewhere out there, there are still people who remember seeing it happen live. Sitting in dark living rooms in the middle of the night, watching HBO, when suddenly the movie disappeared. And for a few strange minutes, somebody else took control of the screen. Not a television station, just Captain Midnight. It's easy to laugh about it now. A pirate message complaining about cable prices probably doesn't sound at all threatening today. But in 1986, it felt impossible. Like a ghost suddenly appearing inside the machine. A reminder that even the biggest systems in the world could still be interrupted by a single human voice. And maybe that's why the story still survives. Because deep down, there's something unsettling about hijacked broadcasts. They feel wrong, like reality briefly slipped out of place. A signal arriving that wasn't supposed to be there. And somewhere above Earth, the satellites kept moving silently through space, carrying movies, news, music, and for 4.5 unforgettable minutes, one pirate transmission. And in the end, the protest that was meant to fight growing control over television signals ultimately helped create even stricter rules and tighter security. Years later, McDougal would reflect on the incident by saying, "I had no animus and no malice in my heart. Just one man trying to send a message into the sky." For all his later regrets, one question always seemed to follow John McDougal. Did he know it would work? His answer? Definitely. Greetings from Florida is written, researched, and narrated by me, Joe Torino. Sound design and production by yours truly, with original theme music by Modern Mimes. You can find more stories, photos, and episode extras at @FloridaPod on Instagram, and visit FloridaPod.com for links to listen on any platform, plus the official merch store. And if you like what you hear, share the show, leave a review, or tell a friend who loves a little weird with their history. And as always, stay weird, Florida. We'll see you next time.